Cool. So, hi everybody. We're going to go and get started here real quick. My name is Michael Pedone. You should all be able to see my screen real quick. I'm going to be talking to you, so there's not a lot that's on the screen, but at least we're going to go over the three things that are here. First things first is, if you don't know who I am and you're wondering why you should listen to me or why you should be part of this webinar, let me just say this. If you're in sales, the reason why is because I've made millions of dollars selling as a straight commission sales rep, and I created I did so by perfecting certain sales techniques selling by phone, and I'm going to share those with you. Now, today's session, what we're going to be talking about is selling in a remote scenario, right? That's what a lot of people, what you guys are doing. You're selling in a remote economy. You're working from your office. Your prospects are working from their office, things of that nature. And so there's been a lot of people that are saying, hey, I'm struggling, to have my team, manage them, and individual sales reps are struggling to get a hold of prospects and things of that nature. And so we're going to go over some basics. I'm going to help you here get things rolling. Okay. So the first thing is this. Hey, let me start by saying this. The good news is this, okay, is that what I'm about to share with you should have been the same strategy, the same game plan as it relates to you, the outbound rep, that you should have had whether you're working in an office or working from home. Okay, so that's the good news. So if you ever get back to where you're working in the office, you just follow what I'm going to share with you, and you're going to make a lot of money doing it that way, as long as you are consistent. So the first thing is this. Let's talk about your schedule. I know you want to get a hold of prospects. You're saying they're hard to get a hold of because they're working remotely, but it starts with you first. So the first thing is this, is you have to, and you might want to write this down, okay? You have to manage your own schedule. If you're working remotely from home in your PJs or whatever, I don't really care, to be honest with you, right? The point is this, is that you have to understand, if you're an outbound sales rep, you have 3 time slots that you're going to need in your daily calendar. And then the first one is prospecting. So you have to set a time, and you have to be disciplined enough to use that time to prospect. Now, a lot of times people think when I say prospecting, it's their outbound dials. That's not what I'm referring to. Prospecting is building that list and making sure that list is ready to go. Now, we're not going to get in today on what that list should be. There's plenty of other YouTube videos I've done on stuff like that, or my blog posts, but you should know what I mean by creating your list. You're always every week that you're making calls, you're going to have people that you finally get on the phone that tell you, no thanks, they're all set. If you handle that and you turn them, well, actually, if you have the right opening value statements, you shouldn't get those responses. But with that being said, there are going to be leads that you're going to run into that are just, they're not qualified, or they're not going to buy from you, whatever. So you want to remove them from your lead list, right? You're always going to run into that on a weekly basis. You're also going to close some of those deals, which means you take them out of your prospecting list. The only bad thing out of closing a deal is you just lost your best customer, your best prospect, right? So as you go through every week, you're going to, your lead list should be shrinking by attrition. Either you decide to stop chasing somebody, or they said that they're not qualified, they're never going to buy, or you close them. And you're always going to have to refill that pipeline. Yes? Does that make sense so far? And you want to definitely make sure that you're setting a time to research and refill that pipeline. For me, I've always found the best time to do it is before calling time. Calling time is normally 9 a.m. right? Anytime after 9 a.m., it's free game for prospects. So when you're working from home, first of all, you probably just saved anywhere from a 15-minute to an hour commute that you're normally used to doing. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, now that you don't have that commute anymore, you're getting your coffee, you're getting situated, you're getting your to-do list. Use that time, whether it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes, to do some outbound prospecting. Do that early and build the list up. Find those lead lists, or find those prospects that match your ICP, and re-add them to your lead list, and then start calling them later on in the day when it's time to call. One of the last things you want to do is during calling hours is research a prospect and then decide to call it. It's going to be, the time management is going to be way better if you come in and you research early before calling hours. You block that time out, 8:15, 8:30, 8:15, 8:45, 8 to 8:30, whatever you want to do, right? 8:30 to 9 if you want, and you block it out and you refill. You set yourself a little goal and try to rebuild those leads that you've lost through attrition. We used to do it every day. We'd come in and look for just 5 to 10 that match what we were looking for. Today, it's a lot easier. You have things like Zoom Info, Uplead, you have a slew of these things where you can plug in some data and get that information out and then export it. Back in my days, it was the phone books, or you had to look through magazines or whatever it was to look for prospects that matched your ICP. Today, it's a lot easier, but you still want to set that time apart and go out there and build that list and replenish anything over the past week or the day prior that you've closed, lost, closed, won. Does this make sense? So you schedule that time to go ahead and do that. Next, you want to go ahead and start your outreach. Your outreach is your first time calls. So remember, there's 3 things in your schedule you're gonna have to do: your prospecting, your outbound calls, and your follow-up calls. So your outreach, I call these your first time calls. Now, you might reach out to somebody for the first time 5 times, meaning that if you reach out to somebody for the first time and you do not get a hold of them, even if you leave a voicemail, send an email, whatever, right? When you reach out to them the second time, if you haven't heard back from them, that's still a first time outreach. So that's going to be a second attempt first time call. And then there's a third attempt first time call, and a fourth and a fifth, right? So let's say if you're doing that, you want to schedule the times that you're doing those. Most salespeople make the mistake of doing follow-up calls first. Why? Why do they do follow-up calls first? Can anybody tell me that? Let me pop open your, there we go. Thank you for getting that. Why do you guys do, there it is, Eugene, you said it, right? Most salespeople do follow-up calls first in the morning because they're easier. The problem is, when do you have more energy? Be honest, in the morning or afternoon? I know for me, I have more energy in the morning, right? And we already established that first time calls is harder than follow-up calls. So why would you wait till the afternoon to do the hard stuff when you have the least amount of energy? Be honest, right? Okay, so the other problem too is if you wait till the afternoon to do your first time calls, the other reason why that's not optimal is because if you're waiting to the afternoon to do your first time calls, you've shrunk the chances of them getting back with you that same day, right? Because if you don't call them till 1, 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, there's very little chance that they can call you back the same day. Yet if you do it in the morning or before noon, you increase your chances. So there's 2 big benefits that I've found to be disciplined, to come in early, start my prospecting, build my lead list, get it ready to go, and then do my outreach. A lot of times what I would do is this, and again, I'm going back to when I was a straight commission sales rep and that's all I did. Now I own SalesBuzz, so I have a lot of hats, right? But when I was strictly even working for other people as a straight outbound sales rep, I come in early, get my prospecting done, and then from 9 to actually 9:45, I would do all my FTC #1, first time calls #1s. And then the reason why I have that 15-minute break in it, from 9:45 to 10, I'll check email, or I'll go to the bathroom, or take a walk around the building sometimes, get some fresh air, come back in. And then from 10 to 10:45, I'm doing all my first time call #2. So anybody the previous day that I called and didn't answer, right, they got bumped to the next day. So when I see it in my to-do list for the day, it says FTC #2, I know that I'm doing those between the 10:45 number. Everybody with me so far? Is this making sense? So then after that 15-minute break or whatever, from 11 to 12 is power hour #1. And that's all out calls for that whole hour. First time calls, whether they're first time, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, it didn't matter. They were all bunched into that, right? And that's what I would do. And when I would do that, I would make more dials by noon than most salespeople did all day. And when you're disciplined to do something like that, and you're consistent, you're just by attrition, you're going to have pipeline filling and you're going to start to hit your numbers. You're going to have a better chance of increasing your numbers. You all with me on this? Now, again, so Eugene, that's a very good thing. So now there's always the exception to the rule. So if I know that I have to handle an order, like you said, like an order came in, got to get it handled. Or let's say I had a previous conversation and I will, yes, Curtis. Let's say I had a previous conversation with a sales rep or I'm sorry, with a prospect, and they wanted to go ahead and schedule the follow-up call, and they wanted it at, say, 10 a.m. next Thursday, just as an example, I am not going to say to them, hey, can't do that. That's when I do my first time cold calls. I'm going to take what the customer or the prospect is wanting, I put it in my schedule, and then I just work around it for that specific day. I would rather have a plan coming in that I'm consistent with and see my schedule in the morning, go, I have to make a small adjustment here, rather than come in every day and just kind of captain wing it and just go whichever way the wind blows me that day. Does that make sense? You follow me? Okay. So somebody asked, I think it was Curtis asked about power hour. So power hour number 1 is from 11 till noon. And so if I'm using the simple formula of first time calls between 9 and 9:45, and then again, that 15-minute break is because as salespeople, we need it. Listen, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. Okay. So not only are we responsible for our own revenue, or paying our own bills and our own family, we're responsible for all the other families that are associated with the company that you're working for, because it's sales that generates revenue that gets everybody paid. Okay. Now, with that being said, I'm coming from a background where it was literally, when I say straight commission, I mean, if I didn't sell anything that week, I didn't have a paycheck and I just worked for nothing, and I still have bills coming in. My family still needs to eat. So I had to get really good at this. It was either get good or die at it. There was no in between. You can't be a straight commission sales rep and have the kind of lifestyle that I was wanting. I didn't come from money, right? I never went to college, barely graduated high school. So my only way out of that mess was I'm going to have to be very successful at selling. How do you become very successful at selling? Well, it helps to have motivation, for one, absolutely. But you also want to help as many people as you can. And the more people you help, the more money you're going to earn. Now, money doesn't buy happiness, but it sure does buy a lot of options. And it's better, the more options you have, the better it is, right? So it's that whole cycle. But with that being said, the motivation and the right reasons is not enough. You have to have a game plan, and there's lots of game plans out there. Just showing up to work and going, flying by the seat of your pants is a game plan. Not the best one, but there's still game plans out there. So when I would come in and I would do my prospecting early before calling hours. And then from 9 o'clock, it's time to rock, 9:45, banging out my first time calls on my lead list that I had. Take a little break, walk, stretch my legs, get my head right, come back 10 to 10:45. Anything that was marked FTC number 2, first time call number 2, I was calling between 10 and 10:45. Again, take that little break. From 11 to 12, no break. It's all out blitz, all first time calls, third, fourth, fifth attempts, if you will, right? That's that hour. Usually I don't need to do more than that. I know some people say we need to do 21 reaches. We can get into all that later. Usually after 5 attempts, so there's an issue there. So with that being said, if you want to do more, that's up to you. But even at that point, you want that hour to do those, because here's the thing. As you go through, don't forget, just like your lead list is going to shrink on whether they didn't want to buy from you or whatever. When you finally get a hold of somebody, you're not going to have as many third attempts on that day, or fourth attempts, or fifth attempts eventually as you go through your cycle. Does this make sense? So you're doing a lot of your calls in the first hour, then you're going to have some in the second, and then they're going to keep getting smaller in the third eventually. Follow me? All right. So then and by the way, this is the same plan you should have if you're working, in an office. Now, again, I understand a lot of you might take, I need help in a remote economy because my clients aren't there. This is the same process. You still want to follow this process to get that outreach, because you have to outwork the situation. So the next big thing I love right now is people are going, well, sure, I could get my dials up and I could follow this plan, but nobody's at their office. It's all going to their cell phones or whatever. Okay, well, a lot of companies that are working remote, they have, one, email is really important, voicemail is important, but a lot of them have VoIP that transfer to their phone anyway. Are you starting to recognize that? Meaning their cell phone, it's going from their office, it's just transferring right to their office. So with that being said, you still follow this plan, you're doing this work, you're going to get a lot of prospects on the phone if you put the effort into it. Now, I'm going to share with you, and Robert, I'll go back in a second for you. I'm going to share with you one trick that I call well, I don't want to call it a trick, but it's definitely a technique that works. It's called the double tap. I don't know why this works, but I found that when I'm calling a lead, whether it's a follow-up call or a first-time call, when I call and the first time and they're not answering, it's about to go to voicemail. You know, you can always sense when it's right about to go to voicemail. I hang up, right? I hang up, I give it about 5 seconds, and then I call back. About 20% of the time, it's a 20% increase. They answer on that second call. I don't know why, but it just works. So it's called the double tap. Now, before I move on, I see some questions coming in here. All right. So Robertson, you're confused. Please clarify the difference between your calls between 10:45 and the 11 to noon. It's actually not 11 to 11:45. It's actually 11 till noon. So let's do this again. Let's say you have a brand new lead and you're going to call it at least 5 times. Now I don't count the double tap as 2 calls, by the way. So I label them as FTC, first time call number 1. So if I call, let's say it's about to go to voicemail, I hang up, wait a second, call back again, do the double tap. And let's say they don't answer at that time. I'm going to leave a voicemail. I'm going to send an email, and I might even send a text right then. Okay. So that's FTC number 1. So it automatically gets logged in my Salesforce. And then I'm going to schedule a task for FTC number 2. And then I'll pick the date of that FTC number 2. If I want it to be the next day, or if I want to spread it out a little bit, that's fine too. Whatever you decide you want to do, right? I change my cadence based on the lead type. If I had a warm inbound lead where they requested a quote, I'm going to call that not only in the morning or as soon as I get the quote, but I'm going to call it before the end of the day as well, right? But if it's a straight up cold prospect that I'm reaching out to, I might spread it out a little bit more. So it gives me that leeway. But either way, I'm going to make it FTC number 2 so that when my calendar comes up for that day in Salesforce, when I log in for the day and I go, okay, I got my lead list for FTC number 1s, and I see the number of FTC number 2s that I have to do, I'm only going to call the FTC number 2s between, can somebody tell me? What's the time? Between 10 and 10:45. That's right. Okay, so then between the 10 and 10:45, I do those. And as I do those, I'm going to increase my chances of getting a hold of somebody, or somebody replies back through email or whatever, right? The ones I don't get a hold of, I will schedule as an FTC 3 or 4 or 5, right? But those, when I log in for that day, when I see I have an FTC number 3, 4, or 5, I'm only calling those between 11 a.m. and noon. And that's my power hour number 1. Does that clarify things? Does that make sense? Right? Okay. And now Stephanie's asked me for colder leads, you leave a week in between calls. It really depends. I really like to do, the 72-hour approach on a first time lead. So I like to, call, voicemail, email, maybe even send a text on the first day. Second day, call, voicemail, and the third day, maybe call and email on that. And then I could spread it out after that. Like me personally, I found great success within a 72-hour period, really doing that. And if they haven't responded during that time, and as long as I know that I've really gone ahead and I've targeted the prospect that they meet my ICP, I know they've gotten my message. I've had such success with crafting my message that I know it works. So I'm not going to change it because I've had a lot of success with it. So I know my message. Once you know your message is on target and your target audience, you're reaching out to them. If they don't respond within that 72 hours, I like to put them in a drip campaign. And maybe for the rest of the month, it might be once a week. And then after that, every 30 days. Yes. And then I would go ahead and let maybe even like a drip email marketing campaign take off and just educate them and get notified if they click a link or raise their hand, right? So that's kind of my process there. Somebody else is, okay, you're welcome, Steph. Robert's asking ICP. It stands for Ideal Customer Profile. Your best bet when this session is done is to Google SalesBuzz plus ICP, all right? So SalesBuzz space, +sign space, ICP. You're going to find a couple of articles and probably even some videos that you can watch for free that'll really explain that and then break that down. This is critical in sales. I mean, it's so basic. That's why I don't even really wanted to start there. You need to know what your ICP is, what your ideal customer profile is. You need to know what problems does your your target audience have to have in order for them to even be interested in your solution, right? You need to know those two things before you ever pick up the phone, whether it's a cold call or a warm inbound lead. You should know those things. So if you don't, I would definitely research that. But assuming you know those things and you need a strategy, especially in this remote industry where you and the prospects are remote, I feel that you're still going to have great success if you follow a strategic plan of action, whether you're in office or you're out of office. Because when you're following this kind of plan and you're doing those outreaches, you build your list up with prospecting, then you're doing your outbound, your outreach, your first time calls, and then you're doing them enough and you're cycling through your lead list and you're going through, and plus you're always putting new stuff in. If you do it that way, just the law of averages, you're going to start getting a hold of people. They're going to start to respond to your emails. They're going to get your voicemail, take your call the next time you call them, or call you back. And same thing with the text, they respond that way. Got it? Okay, cool. All right, with that being said, so the next thing is, so then you go to lunch. By the way, it's really important. I know all of us working from home, step away from the computer. How many of you, when COVID started, we started getting transitioned into working from home, that you just blazed from the time you got out of bed till it was dark out? And that just became a habit, right? Might not even mean showering, but like, listen, we've all done it. Okay. It's super important to make sure that you go ahead and you take the time during the day to step away for your own mental break, whether at 12 to 1, you got to do something for yourself. Again, take a walk outside, wherever you are, to handle some personal stuff. You need that mental refresher to give yourself that break. Now, when you come back, right, from one to 2, now you're doing your follow-up calls. These are people that you have spoken to in the past, but for whatever reason, you have to do a follow-up call, but a date and time was not picked. There are going to be times when you're on a phone with a prospect for the first time, you're having the conversation, and a follow-up call is going to need to have happen, and they pick a date and time, and that's great. There's also a lot of times where it's just call me next week, and they don't want to pick a date or time or whatever, or next month or whatever it is. We all have in our pipeline right now, if we go log in there, there's going to be a decent amount of leads in the pipeline you spoke to that do not have a scheduled follow-up call, but you have to follow up them, right? Okay. So with that being said, those are the ones you wait till the afternoon to follow up on. And I like to, I like to schedule them out, hey, from 1 to 2, I'll start doing something, take a little bit of break, and then 2 to 3, etc. It's kind of like the same plan. Does this make sense? You guys with me? It's very important to do it that way because you want the first time calls are going to be the majority. And so what has always worked for me is to have a goal of the number of dials I want to do per day. And what I learned a long time ago is that the magic number was 60 sales dials per day. I was always good around 40, but when I did the extra 20 dials, when I learned to do that, 60 dials and or 3 hours of talk time. This is critical. It's not just about the dials, it's about the talk time as well. Some days I only get 15 dials in, but I got 3.5 hours of talk time. Not a problem. Other days, I got 60 dials in, didn't get a hold of anybody, and I only had about an hour worth of talk time. Okay. What's not okay is doing 20 dials a day and having 58 minutes of talk time. What did you do with the other 7 hours of the day? You can't have too many days like that during a month and expect to hit your numbers. So I always like to have a goal of 60 dials a day and or 3 hours of talk time. But I always wanted to get at least 40 dials before noon if possible, because I know that if I can knock out the majority, 2/3 of it by noon, when I come back from lunch, I got between 1 and 5 p.m. to knock out 20 calls. The pressure is off of me. And the rest is easy breezy. Got it? Does that make sense? Or like I said, if I only were able to do 5, 10, 15 calls in the morning, but it was because I got a hold of a bunch of people and I'm really good at getting them engaged and getting the conversation going. So if I still had an hour and a half or 2 hours of talk time, before noon, that's okay. Does that make sense? So you have to schedule your day like this to where you are disciplined you're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes prospecting first thing before 9 a.m. to replenish any leads that you may have gone through the day before, as an example. Then you go, okay, I'm going to be these are my first time calls from this time, my call block for my second first time calls, and then my call block for the third and above calls. And then you have your call blocks for your follow-up calls. Okay. Now, how does this help you get a hold of people and reach them who are not in their office? I kind of already went over that. Believe it or not, when you're doing this kind of output, you are going to go ahead and increase the chance of getting a hold of them. The messages are going to get through. Their calls are being forwarded to them, or they're automatically just getting rerouted to their cell phones. If you're not hearing back from anybody, chances are it's not because that they're working from remote. You would probably be seeing the same results if they were still in the office. The difference is your messaging is off. If you're putting out if you go 21 business days, that's a month's worth of work, right? And you follow the game plan that I just talked about, where you got the prospecting, the outreach, and the follow-ups, and you got your call blocks, and you're committing to the $60 a day and or 3 hours of talk time. If you're doing that for a month solid and you're not getting the results you want, you can't blame your effort, right? So we check that off. Your effort is there. So what's next? What's next is your method. It's the message you're sending. It's not resonating. Again, assuming you pick the right list or you prospected the right people. Does this make sense? What else can it be? So you have to learn a method. You have to learn how to stand out from the crowd. And it's not this stupid stuff. I got a sales blog email earlier today, and it says the 3 words that get people to call you back. I'm like, okay, I'm interested. What are they? And their words were, are you okay? And they said, leave a voicemail about, hey, so-and-so, it's Michael with XYZ. I just want to say, are you okay? I'm not sure if my messages are getting in. I haven't heard back from you, and I was just worried about you. And I'm just going, who's going to believe that you're really worried about them? Seriously, anybody? I don't want to be, listen, Heather, sure, there's going to be a small percentage that might believe that, okay? But for the majority, if we're in sales and I'm on the other side and somebody that I barely know says, hey, are you okay? I was worried about you, haven't heard back. I'm probably going to go, I think, let me fix your headline. You're worried that you might not hit your sales quota because I haven't responded. Is that better? Right? That's what I would want to say to that salesperson. So I believe in being genuine and honest and not manipulative. And to me, are you okay? I was worried about you sounds manipulative. Listen, unless you were really, truly worried about them, then that's fine. Now, Bruce, humor does help a lot. One of my favorites, if I don't hear from somebody, is one of my subject, I'll leave a voicemail of this, but I also send an email and I just put witness protection program ? I'm like, hey, so I might simply go, hey, Eugene, I haven't heard from you in a while. Just curious, did you go into the witness protection program or did things fall off the rails? Right. And sometimes like that's enough to get them to call. And the other times I just want to be honest. Right, Chris, I think you might have gotten one of these. Hey, Chris, there's a fine line between being persistent and a pest. I don't want to be a pest if you decide to go a different route. When you get a second, will you please let me know where things stand or what needs to happen next? Thanks. And a lot of times that's enough to get somebody to go, oh man, I've been ignoring this guy for a while, and just let me stop what I'm doing and respond. Right? Does that make sense? So I prefer to have that kind of genuine honesty there. But with that being said, on the first time outbounds, if you're not getting anybody to call you back or respond to your emails or respond to your texts or your LinkedIn messages, right? Or even what's worse, you do get them on the phone and you hear, no, thanks, no, sure, we're all set because you blew the opportunity. It's your method. How many of you know what the very first 3 questions are going to be if you get your prospect on the phone before you ever pick up to make the call? How many of you know if you get them on the phone, you know exactly what you're going to say and what your first 3 questions are? Be honest. I almost always, I like the honesty, right? So there you go, right? You should know. Every sales call, whether it's an inbound lead, if the phone's ringing, it's an inbound lead, or if I'm doing an outbound prospecting call, I know the first 3 questions that I'm going to ask every time. Here's the beauty of it. And The question wording might change, but the purpose of each question does not change. And it hasn't changed in over 25 years. No matter what industry I was in, once I learned this process and I perfected the phone sales skills process, right? I always knew that, okay, I have to do this first. So I have to say this to be able to ask this. And this is why I'm asking it. And then once I get that and they respond, their guard goes down, their ears go up. And now they give me permission to ask them some more questions. So I know what the next question I'm going to ask and why. I don't care what the answer is because I'm having a sales conversation. Once I ask them that and they respond, we're engaged in a conversation. And then that question is going to link to the next step. And it's just a natural progression. That's how sales should be. I've had salespeople have taken my course who've had 20 years experience and taken my course and go, I wish I knew this a long time ago. It's a very simple roadmap to follow. And let me just give you a hint. So your method, when you're doing your first time call outreach, whether it's first, second, third, fourth, or fifth attempt, you finally get them to pick up the phone, you have to have an opening value statement that does two things: piques interest and gains permission to continue the call. And too many sales reps make the mistake of what they say after hello, my name is, that triggers the prospect to say, no, thanks, understood, we're all set, we already used something like that, don't have any in budget, right? And now you're frustrated. So to help you with that, for anybody that hasn't taken I know I have a lot of students that are in here as well, but anybody that hasn't taken that, I will give that course away for free for you. All you have to do after the session, just go to salesbuzz.com, and in the top there, you'll see where it says sales training courses. If you hover over it, there'll be a little drop down. It'll say free trial. You're going to take that free course right away. It'll show you how to create a customized opening value statement that wins 90% of the time or more. That's how powerful it is once you learn the formula to do it. And then you have the right list. Now, you're also going to have to practice what you're saying. So you could have the most perfect worded opening value statement out there, but you have to be able to deliver it as well. And this is where, so we're on number 2 with your method. So once you have your call schedule and you're going to be disciplined, you're going to focus on that. You have to be ready. So when you're doing the effort and they do answer the phone, that you go ahead and you're prepared to execute. Remember this: when the time to perform arrives, the time to prepare has passed. Let me say that again. When the time to perform arrives, the time to prepare has passed. Okay, doesn't matter if you're playing in a band or if you're picking up the phone or you're in a sporting event situation where you're in a sports team or whatever, right? You have to be ready to go. And so just because you learn how to craft that opening value statement, you have to role play to make sure that you get your cadence down and your tone down and your energy level down. These things take work. Major League Baseball players, before the game, they have batting practice, right? NHL or any hockey player, I shouldn't say just NHL. My daughter plays college hockey, right? So hockey players in general, before the game, the 20-minute skate, right, to warm up. Same thing for sales. We should be warming up and role playing every day. And just because you're working remotely doesn't mean that you can't do a live Zoom call with your manager. I highly recommend, if you're a sales director or sales manager or VP of sales on this, that you start every morning. You're going to tell your team, we're doing 10-15-minute Zoom call, and you're going to randomly pick somebody that day to do an opening value statement. Because everybody that realizes that, hey, I might be called upon to do this in front of my team, you're going to up your game. Okay, iron sharpens iron. This is how you get better. Listen, this is the reason why I got into sales, right? I mean, I'm growing up poor and things of that nature is I didn't want to be poor, and schooling just wasn't for me. But so when I got into sales, I realized you could live like a rock star. The more you help people, the more money you earn, the more options you have, and life is good. Okay, so with that being said, it's not just, well, I came in, I did my number of dials, I sent the number of emails, my open rates are this, but nobody's setting appointments with me. You got to outwork this situation. You're not a robot. You're going to have to use your unique personality. You're going to have to make your opening value statements better than the other 20 or 30 or 50 sales reps that are calling that same prospect. You got to get better. You want to get better. So it's going to be the role playing, but you also have to fix your method. If you're not getting anybody to call you back, it's your messaging and you're doing the effort, your message. It's either your messaging or you have the wrong lead list, right? You didn't prospect the right lead list, correct? All right, let's go to the third thing so we can get you guys back on the phone. Last one is this. It's your confidence. When you know that you have the right lead list, you got your discipline down for your schedule and you're sticking to it, and you know exactly what to say when you do get them on the phone. You know exactly how to word that email, what kind of text to leave, what kind of LinkedIn message to send. And when you get the conversation started, your confidence goes through the roof. When you know what the first 3 questions to ask us a prospect is once you get them on the phone, and why to ask it and how to ask it, and what to do with their responses back, and then you know what to do after you ask those first 3 questions, your confidence goes through the roof. Here's the other benefit. You start becoming a closing machine on those outbound calls. Who do you think your sales manager, your marketing person is going to send the hot inbound warm leads to? You get really good at cold calling and closing those and getting those deals in the pipeline that turn into gold. Who do you think is the first pick to get the inbound leads when they happen? You are. Listen, when I first got into sales at phone sales here in Florida, I don't know what it is about Clearwater area, Florida, Tampa, Clearwater area. It seems like we were the capital of phone sales rooms, and we were all straight commission. And you start, only the strong survive. I mean, you could be a new guy 1 week and you start hitting it out of the park. Guess what? The inbound on cold calling, when inbound leads come in, you got fed the new stuff, and they test it out. If you start closing them, you got more. It's going to be, I can't imagine it's not the same today. Any managers want to speak up on that? I'm pretty confident that's the way it is, right? Why would somebody give you, I'm sweating in here. I guess I'm really fired up and worked up on this stuff. I'm very passionate about this stuff. I want to help. So with that being said, let me ask you this. Why would a sales manager or a sales director or a marketing person give you the Glenn Ross leads if you haven't proven yourself to be successful in cold calling? If you can be successful in cold calling, the warm inbound leads, your numbers go up, right? And here's the good news. The process is still the same whether you're cold calling or you're handling an inbound warm lead. The 3 questions are the same that I mentioned to you earlier, are the same on an inbound warm lead or if I'm doing an outbound cold call. It's the sales process. If you think in the terms of baseball, every time you pick up the phone, you're in the batter's box. Your job is to get to first base first. Nothing else can happen until you get to first base. Am I right? If you hit a home run, what do you have to do? You still have to run to first, touch first, second, third, and then come home, right? If you hit a double, can you run from home plate across the pitcher's mound to second base? No, you get tagged out. Excuse me. And so I see so many salespeople, when they get excited when they get a warm lead, they skip steps. They get somebody interested, and so they schedule the demo right away, and they just want to do the demo. You don't know if that person was an intern that was asked to look into this, right? All right. So the 3 things: your schedule, your method. When you have those 2 things together, your confidence is going to go way up. With that being, so what are the 3 questions Heather's asking? Is the first one, how are you doing today? Okay, so let's talk about that. I've mentioned this before. There's a lot of people have strong feelings about the how are you today. I personally ask when I call, whether it's a warm lead or it's a cold call. By the way, let's just get the definitions out. The definition of a cold call is contacting any prospect that is currently not raising their hand. And as a matter of fact, the definition of a cold call is contacting it could be also a client that is not currently raising their hand, okay? So a warm lead is, hey, they filled out a form on their website or something of that nature, and they're interested. So when you're calling somebody, whether it's warm or cold, I personally like to say, how are you? It's my personality, it's my style. I'm uncomfortable not saying it. There is no right or wrong reason here, okay, or answer to this. If you are not comfortable saying, how are you? Don't say it. if you took a sales training class and the sales trainer told you not to say it, but you're uncomfortable in saying it, you might want to ignore what that person said to you. Okay, because the theory is, well, if you say how are you, it gives them an out. Okay, listen, you call them, hey Heather, it's Michael Pedone, SalesBuzz.com. How are you? I'm fine. And what's this regarding? Well, listen, I'm glad you asked. The reason for my call is, and I'm right in there. It's not a big deal, honestly. Got it? So with that being said, no, the first question is not how are you? That's an option. The very first question, actually, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to tell you the first question because it's in the free class. What's not in the free class is question number 2 and 3. Question number 2 is called your engagement question. So this is after your opening value statement. You do your opening value statement, you peak interest, gain permission to continue the call, right? And they go, yeah, sure, I got a second, go ahead. And now I'm going to ask my second question. See, there's a question in your opening value statement. That's why I want you to watch that free class. It'll show you what the question is. It's actually in your opening value statement. So once you get that done, now you're done with phase 1. You're on first base, that you piqued their interest and now you're on first base. So now you got to get to second. Well, there's qualifying. Okay. There's 3 parts to qualifying. The first part of qualifying is we have to determine if there's a problem that exists, because if they can't see a problem, if they don't recognize a problem, there's no reason for a presentation. Agreed? So and I can't just call and tell them they have a problem because they'll doubt it, right? So my very first question is called an engagement question. My engagement question is designed to place the prospect's attention in an area I need them thinking about, so we can start to uncover for problems there. And then the third question is their opportunity size. So once I ask the engagement question and they go, yes, so-and-so, or this or that, or they pick a choice, and then I can ask, oh, and just out of curiosity, and then I ask what's called an opportunity size question. And then once I have that, we can get to the actual pain point. It's a real simple process that maybe we'll get into on another webinar down the road. If you're impatient, you could always have your company sign up and get you guys access to the course. I don't really sell to individuals, just FYI, I don't really sell to individuals. The course is designed for the company to buy it for you so that you can have access. And it's let's just say it's very affordable. So I would have just have your managers, your sales directors look at that. But all of you can try the free course and get your opening value statements going. And if I can be of any other help to you as well, just either hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'll be more than happy to do so. Okay. Yes, Randall, I will be sharing this. All right. Let's see. I'll take one more question. So Robert says, I sell employee benefits. Employees' biggest problems are out of control costs, difficulty attracting, maintaining top talent, and compliance exposure. But I'm not sure which. If any of those 3 problems are relevant to the prospect I'm calling, how would you design a first-time call? This is an excellent question, Robert. You have to find out who is your ICP, your ideal customer profile. So I would look back at all the top clients. If you're new, then ask the manager or the owner, right? If it's your own business, you're an independent, whatever, I would look at your past clients and find out who are your best clients. Like if you could only choose like one category. So when I do an analysis, I'll just give you an idea. So yes, I have clients like 3M. They paid me lots. We're talking well over 6 figures, right? For my training program. They're not my target audience, even though I train their entire sales fleet around the world. My target audience, the ones that buy from me the most on a regular basis and renew all the time, they have anywhere from 10 to 200 employees. That's the first level. And then 200 to 500 is next, right? And I know they're in the US and Canada primarily. And, I can go right down the industry list. Number 1 is computer industry, right? And it just keeps on going, or computer software, SaaS, I should say. And then information technology and then shipping, right? I know these metrics on who my target audience is. And then from there, I can narrow it down more on, okay, I have these clients that bought from me the most and they're the quickest deals, paid on time, love my stuff, testimonials, renew. I look to see, I take all that together and I see where's the overlap between all these. So for me, what I have found, when you do that, I have found that yes, my target audience, they want sales training. But when I use my opening value statement, I don't call them and say I provide online sales training. I call them and I go, hi, this is Michael Pedone at SalesBuzz.com. How are you today? And they go, good. What can I do for you? Well, the reason for my call, I specialize in helping outbound sales teams overcome call reluctance. Now, let me just stop right there. That's half of my opening value statement. And I found that word call reluctance, even if they've paid for a sales training before in the past, or if they do sales training in-house, chances are my target audience is going to want to invest in me, or at least learn in more what I have to do. They have at least a quarter of their sales team not hitting numbers because they have call reluctance. They're not making enough dials. So to answer your question, Ron, it's a long answer, right? But you have to figure out who your target audience is and start with number one. That's what I would do. I would create an opening value statement and now you might find there's three different three different lead lists. This leads that match this, they are going to go ahead and out of control cost. The other one is difficulty attracting and maintaining top talent. The third one could be compliance exposure, right? You could have three different opening value statements, three different lead lists. You could have 5, you could have 10, right? But in your case, if you have 3, you can separate them out. One of the other things I like to do is, you got to test them out. So if you make, $25 or $50 or $100 and you're doing the compliance, measure those results. But I have a second and third backup too. So if you do your opening value statement and they still reject you, right, you can come back and then you can tag in the difficulty attracting, maintaining top talent. Let me give you an example. If I call somebody, and this will be the last one, then we got to cut it, right, guys? So if I call somebody, first time call them, cold calling them, they meet my ICP, my ideal customer profile. They got 5, 10, 15, 20 sales reps there, right? I know some of them have call reluctance, and I have programs, packages to match all those sizes so I can call. And if I do my opening value statement where I mention the call reluctance, and they go, yeah, no, right now is not a good time to, no thanks, or something of that nature. I'll go, listen, I'm sure you get calls like this all the time, but I'm not calling you out of the blue. I actually did a little research, and there's a strong possibility that what we offer might be able to help your team close more business for you. I would just need to ask you a few questions first to be sure. Would that be okay? And so that's my second attempt on that first time call, right? I just didn't run scared. I didn't go, when's a better time? That's what weak salespeople do, or salespeople who haven't been properly trained. Okay, so I come back on my second strong statement. And if they still say no, that's not interested, I'll say, okay, you know what? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you an email, my contact information, just in case you run into a situation where your team's not hitting their numbers and or maybe turnover is a little higher than you want, or you're going to have some uncomfortable conversations that you'd rather not have because of lack of hitting the numbers. This way you have a resource to reach out to in case you need help. Is that fair enough? I call this planting the seed. So what did I do? I tried my first, I tried my second, they still said no. So I'm letting them off the hook, but I hit 3 little hot buttons on the way out the door, and I'm planting that seed, and my email to them is going to hit those as well. I cannot tell you how many times I'll come in the next day or a week later, or sometimes a month later, sometimes it's a quarter later, and they go, hey, I was thinking about what you said because I planted a seed, and then all of a sudden that that trigger event happened. And since I said it the way I did, it planted that seed. I was the first person they thought of, and now I have an inbound warm lead coming my way. This is how you sell, guys. This is how you sell by phone. This is the kind of effort you're going to need to be successful with, whether you and your prospects are remote or everybody's back at the office. To me personally, I hope we all stay remote, be better for the environment, saves you on time and gas and traveling. But you don't want to overwork yourself either, which is a very easy habit to do. So when you create that schedule and you stick to it and you make sure that you work in time for you to have breaks, you're going to be very successful and you're not going to drain your batteries. All right. I hope you guys found this helpful. Please let me know your thoughts. Feel free to email me or leave me messages on LinkedIn. And yes, we will definitely get this video out there. Okay, guys. I hope you found it helpful. All right. We'll see you. Take care.